Welcome back to the Stuff About Money They Didn't Teach You in School podcast. I am Erik Garcia, certified financial planner, and I am excited about this series that I am doing with my friend Billy Wagner here. This is a little bit different than the normal Stuff About Money podcast. My co-host is totally different. Xavier's still around. Don't worry, y'all. But as many of you know, I'm not only a financial advisor, but I also own independent insurance agency. And I've made a lot of friends in that industry, in that space, and Billy is one of them. And there's something unique that I've learned about insurance professionals, and they have really big hearts, and they're very giving people. They care about their communities, they care about their coworkers, and I just wanted to celebrate that, and I also wanted to just highlight what people are doing in the space. So I asked Billy, who owns an agency out in Florida, to join me. Billy, welcome as you didn't even mean a guest, and you're already co-host.
Yes, I love that I skipped that step. It's awesome. It's really great to be on this journey with you, Erik. I think, life is about like relationships, and the way relationships come to pass is interesting. And we've kind of run into each other through, the insurance space, and it's been great to get to know you. You've taught me a ton about coffee and many other things. But this is just fun. When you came up with this idea, I was like, I wanted to be a part of it. I love the spirit of giving, and I agree with you. The insurance community is so filled with it, and I think it needs to be highlighted, and I think it can do a lot for inspiration to others. So I'm just happy to be a part of it with you.
Yeah, and it's something that we've talked extensively on, and even some of the people that we've already had the opportunity to hear about how they're involved in their community. You know, it, Giving isn't a one time. It's not a season. It's not like a season of giving. It's almost like a lifestyle. It's an ethos. It's a posture, if you will, of giving, to see how they engage people. We're recording this. It is December as we're recording this. But what y'all are going to get here is an 8-part series. It's 8 parts so far, right? If it ends up being 9 or 10, I really can count y'all. But we're just going to highlight some people that we know. We kind of handpicked them. These are not people who came to us and said, "Ooh, go tell the world what I'm doing." We handpicked some of these people because we know or have heard of their reputation, in kind of what they're doing in the community. And we just wanted to paint a picture of the different ways that people are involved. Really, and Billy, you and I have been talking about this. Like, through this journey, we're getting inspired. Like, we're hearing stories, and like, man, like, I want to go and engage different ways of giving. I don't know about you, but certainly for me, it's been an inspiration and a motivation to hear from these people.
Yeah, I mean, like, try to have a bad day when you're giving back, or you're, just hearing the stories of what other people are doing. When you're making an impact on someone, you are you are feeling a certain way, and we've heard that from a lot of people. I think I think the audience is really going to enjoy the guests. I think they're very different perspectives, a lot of diversity.
Mhm.
One of the universal traits, though, is that they all kind of learned through either their culture or their family to be givers early on.
Yeah.
And if that happens, and you can inspire others to do that in your family, you can really change some things in your world. And that part is really, really interesting.
What's legacy, right? One of our guests, we joked about being brainwashed, right? Being brainwashed as a young child to be a giver, but it's a value, right? Anything that you teach your kid or that you were taught as a kid is quote unquote brainwashing, right? You're being taught, you're being instilled a particular value, and I think giving is a value. In fact, when years and years and years ago, and I still do collaborate today, but I did a lot of real intentional collaboration with a couples counselor, a good friend of mine, and we presented at counselor conferences, and I would talk about money, and he would talk about, if you had debt, here's the way it would, we're teaching counselors. So I would talk about like the technical side of debt. And he would talk about, look, this is how it manifests itself in a family situation, right? If a client you're counseling has a lot of debt, here's how it manifests itself. So I decided to put together what I call my 5 pillars. At the time, it was 4 pillars of financial security: know where your money is, where it's going, plan where you want it to go, squash debt, and then save for tomorrow. real general things that apply to anyone along the demographic spectrum. And as I continued on that journey, I realized I was missing a pillar. As I talked to financially successful people, they all were givers. They all had a giving spirit. And I added a fifth pillar, give to others. So it's something that when I'm talking about financial planning and secure finances, I want to hear what people are passionate about. And that needs to be part of their financial story, because what I find is when you connect with something bigger than you that you're passionate about, that you can see how far your money can go in that space, you start to think about your money different, right? You become less materialistic for you, less what can I do for me, and more what can I do for others. And that's really what this is about.
Yeah, I love that. I think, if you have that, I believe that you receive from the whole that you give through. And it's probably like a lot of your clients that, are doing well are givers, as you said. And that's just it's a trademark of successful people. And, as a business owner, what I realized is I don't want to be a part of anything that doesn't have a giving component to it. And we have this opportunity as a business owner to do that, and to also get our teams involved and make a difference that way as running a business. And I think that's an opportunity that I'm never going to be involved in something from here forward that doesn't have that component.
Yeah, I think the business owner in particular is in a unique position, right? Because we get to create. And when we can create, part of what we create is we create revenue that can support different things. And I do want to say one thing here, though. I have seen some of the biggest givers I have seen, maybe not in pure dollar amount, but in terms of pure spirit, are people who don't necessarily have as much as you or I. They're incredibly, in fact, I'll share this story with you. I remember back in 2011, I went to Cuba, visited Cuba, my first time there. It was my parents' first time back since they left in the early 60s. And I mean, I don't have to tell you about the Cuba. Cuba is a very poor country. Communism kind of wrecked the economy. And I was leaving, I had to leave early. I had to come back to the States early. And I went with a friend. We drove from the small town my dad grew up in, to a small town, to a little village outside of Havana. And we had lunch. And Billy, these people didn't have much. They cooked us lunch, and me and my friend are sitting down, and he had made several trips to Cuba. He had family there as well. Billy, there was this feast that they had cooked us: black beans, coffee, plantains, everything. There was no meat, but just it was this. And I turned to my friend. I'm like George, I feel really bad eating their food. Like people in Cuba have ration cards. This was a lot of food. This was expensive stuff. It wasn't the best quality, but it was expensive. And he said, eat it all. You don't understand. I said, what? He goes, do you know how much joy you're giving them right now by letting them give to you? And that stuck with me. And I've heard some people say, and I understand this to some degree, because I think it's an incredible sacrifice to give something to somebody with no expectation in return. That's a sacrifice. But sometimes we forget the blessing or the reward that we get from giving. If we don't ever make ourselves vulnerable and let people give to us, we're potentially robbing someone of that joy. And I don't want to be guilty of that.
Yeah, that's very well said. I really like that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. Because that we need to be reminded of that. Because you're looking for places to give, but another way you can give is by accepting that in others that are being generous and recognizing that in them. So I love that.
And I
So
think part of it, one of our guests talked about listening to what others need, and I think that's part of it. Is don't always think that you can solve problems with a check, right?
yeah.
So let's dive into maybe some of the questions that we asked them, and you and I can chat about that, and just to kind of give our listeners a taste of what to expect. What do you think?
I love that. Let's do it.
Cool. All right.
So I'll kick us off
Mhm.
then. So, really what's been really cool is the inspiration from each person that, we've talked to, and that we will talk to, because they're giving people. but it's interesting to find out kind of where that started. What's the motivation or the inspiration? So why don't you share kind of where that came from for you?
Yeah, I think it's probably two levels for me. Number one, I grew up in an immigrant family, and community is really important, and you share stuff. You just it's just kind of part of the ethos. It's just the posture, the heart posture of that community and that culture, where what I have is yours, what you have is mine. So there's just kind of this sharing mentality. My dad has always said, and he still jokes today, he goes, son, when I die, I want my tombstone to say he never said no. So I've got
Mm,
this beautiful living image of what it means to be a sharer, a giver, someone who's willing to give the shirt off his back. So certainly that's a picture that I have. And then you take that and then you kind of blanket over it. I would say just, you know, my faith and what I believe, it calls me to consider others more valuable than myself. Doesn't mean to I don't consider myself important. It just means that I believe as a Christian, I'm called to be an imitator of Jesus, and Jesus was always elevating people, always meeting the needs of the marginalized, and it wasn't always financially. In most cases, it wasn't. It wasn't materially, but it's what are the needs of marginalized people, people who are in need. The widow, the orphan. This represents marginalized people 2,000 years ago. Who are the marginalized today that need dignity, that need some type of physical need met, some type of mental need met, some type of emotional need met. So I'd say that's my inspiration or my motivation is number one. I feel that's what I'm called to as a follower of Jesus, and then also I had this beautiful picture that I was able to develop these habits early on, which makes it a little bit easier, right? How
yeah,
about
I
you?
love that.
What's your inspiration? What's your motivation?
So I guess it's kind of a common theme that, inspired by my parents. And, my mom, while she didn't have a lot, she's always wanting to give. Like she's always looking for opportunities to give, whether it's giving love or if someone's in need, she's the first one to be there. And so I think it starts kind of with that. And then, early on, when I started the business, there was a lot of things that I guess you get inspired by something, you get involved in something, and then it kind of motivates you to kind of keep doing more. And I went to an insurance conference back like in 2010, and it's I've always had this in my mind. What I struggle with is I lost my brother in Iraq in 2004, and I think about it every single day, and it's a constant struggle. And I learned about this organization that was giving back to the kids of folks that their parents passed away. It's called Folds of Honor. And so I listened to the founder of that organization. And this is a long time ago. They were just getting started out. No one knew who they were. And everyone in the room was crying. And I remember saying to myself, I've got to be successful enough to where I can make an impact. And I was like, I'm going to put this organization on my shoulders. And at the time, like I said, no one knew. Now they're sponsored by Bud Light and all these large, they're in the NFL and PGA Tour. But at the time, there was nothing. And so for me, it was doing that. And the first book that I wrote, all the proceeds went to that, and we raised like $15,000, and we did a presentation. And so for several years we did that, and it was just like every time you're crying, like the whole room's crying, because it's the other side of war. People don't really realize, what happens at home when you lose somebody like that, and how to get through it. And so that's kind of where it all started for me, and it's ever since then I've been looking for ways to give.
Yeah. Like you said, that's a common thread. There's number one, kind of family, right? It's the values that are instilled being young. And then number two, there's always some personal kind of tugging at your heart, some personal story that is just meaningful and purposeful to you. You talked about, what's it called? What of honor?
Folds of Honor.
Folds of honor, folds of honor.
Mhm.
Obviously very meaningful to you. What are some other? I know you're doing some really cool stuff, and I don't know if you can kind of sum it up here shortly, but I know you're doing some really other cool stuff in your community outside of folds of honor. Can you share a little bit about that and why it's meaningful to you?
Yeah, I think I think, the veterans and people in the military obviously pulls at me. So I've done a lot of stuff with them. But I'm also like, I want to be an example in the community. So I am looking at community organizations, and it's evolved over time what I've done. And we could spend a long time kind of going through that evolution, but essentially I wanted to show up differently, and I wanted to make an impact on these organizations. And we're doing these nonprofit makeovers, almost like, Marcus Lemonis does the profit. We're kind of trying to do the not-for-profit. And I really think this has a ton of potential to scale nationwide, and really understand that these organizations, nonprofits that do so many good things, they all need some of the same help. Just as business owners do, they need help with branding and awareness and strategic planning. And so we've been pouring into them. We've been getting our team involved, and we've built a process around that. Imagine me building a process, but I love process and systems.
Not
So
Billy Wagner. Can't
yeah.
imagine that.
So that's been really fun for me, is like diving into these organizations, helping them, using my business acumen to help them get some momentum, and really feeling the impact from that. So that's been kind of my recent journey, and it's been really, really profound to see. And I have some big plans to do a bunch more with it. So
That's so cool, man. It's just kind of like so unique, right? That you can bring a skill set, and that's just that's a way that we hear a lot of our guests get like, hey, I've got this skill, this passion. Where's the need? How can I match it? Um, that's
yeah,
cool.
I
That's
love
cool.
that. So how about for you? So share with us kind of some of the causes that you support and that are meaningful.
Yeah, I'll share a couple, and maybe kind of what I'm more focused on now, or maybe like a more passionate about now. Recently, I've been really drawn to um, entrepreneurs, kind of like people who are starting kind of like the people that you're helping flip, but maybe like early, like angel stages of that. People who are like, they're making these decisions, these courageous and bold decisions to sacrifice maybe money or some high paying job to do some community work, whatever it might be. But there's a need in the community, and they want to meet it, whether it's to support, you know, trafficked kids, or to help low to moderate income um, families become entrepreneurs. But like these people who are taking risks themselves, and I kind of have a not metrics per se, but I've kind of like three rules of giving. They're more like principles of giving.
Hmm.
I'm gonna take a step back, and I'll come back to these nonprofit entrepreneurs. Number one, we support our church community. I think that's something that's important. There's people who have kind of in that same vein, people who have made commitments to serve people. I feel obligated to support that the work that they're doing, and our church is involved in some overseas mission work. It's really cool stuff, kind of meeting the needs of people in the community. Second thing is, I love directly helping people that I know who are making kind of these entrepreneurs who are making decisions to do that type of work, whatever it might be, whether it's youth work, serving kids, um, whether it's serving homeless, like people that you know are making decisions to actively work in these communities who don't have Bud Light behind them. They don't have, big corporations writing checks for them. They rely on small stuff uh, people in the community who know them. So I like supporting that. And the third is along the kind of in the same kind of vein. If I can do something local, I like doing local to see the impact. But lately, looking for opportunities. How can we? I sit on the board of a counseling center here in the city. So mental health is a big problem in New Orleans. But just kind of being in the business world, I've noticed one of the resources that I have is just connections. And sure, you can write a check, but man, some of the connections and introductions that I can make in my network are huge. So it's something that I have, this resource, this capital that I have, relationships, and I'm able to leverage that and bring them and match, if you will. And it's kind of organic. It's just it's kind of like an ethos. Again, it's just part of like, man, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look out for the needs of others. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, it's fitting that you were an advisor, because I think that you have, throughout your life, you have been advising people. Like when you learn something, you're sharing it and teaching it in a different way, and you're listening to people. So your ability to impact others in your circle. And I love that you're like saying, okay, these people that are trying to make this impact, let me help them early on when they're just getting started to really get that thing off the ground. And I think that's really rewarding. And I think it matches your skill set a lot. And, it's like where you can be impactful is where you should be showing up. And,
Mhm.
and that speaks to kind of, again, some of your skill sets and strengths. And I love that.
Yeah,
Let's,
I
oh,
read a
go
book
ahead.
real quick. Let me kind of
Yeah.
tie this off. I read a book years ago, and it's called "When Helping Hurts." When helping hurts, like how could possibly helping somebody hurt? And it
Mm,
was kind of it was kind of one of those paradigm shifting books. And really the book covered a lot of stuff, but the idea was this. And actually, one of our guests that we talked to kind of talked about this, not from this book, but this idea of you think you're helping people, but you never stop long enough to say, what do you really need help with?
mm,
Right? It's
yeah.
so for me, one thing I'm learning is okay, how does somebody need help? Let me ask them, like, how can I help you? Like, what? Sometimes it's emotional help, sometimes it's a connection, it's a relationship, it's someone they need to meet. It's not always a check. And I think sometimes as business owners, successful business owners, we think we can write a check and solve the problem, and that's our. Sometimes the biggest ways I give is not through money; it's through availability, being present.
Yeah.
You make big impacts by just being present, but you got to stop long enough to do that. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. I love that. It's like we're all really busy, and we cram our lives with all kinds of stuff going on. And, when you asked me to be a part of this, like the last thing I should have said was yes, because I've got 4 million things going on right now. But when I think about it, it aligns so much with my values that I was like, there's no way I'm saying no to this. This is so cool. Right. And so,
Yeah.
you know that's really a very good point. So let's jump into the next one, which is what was out of the ordinary or unexpected for you when you were giving, something that you didn't realize maybe at first.
Yeah, I remember early on, the biggest kind of like that was weird was I thought I was helping someone else. And then when I stopped long enough to reflect on it, I was the one who probably took more away from that. I went on a mission trip when I was in college to Belize, right? You're going to a third world country. You're helping these poor people. We went to an orphanage. We went to an elderly, a home for the elderly. And I'm like, I am here to serve them. And when I came home, I'm like, I was probably changed far more than they were changed. And that probably like the most unexpected thing in the journey early on that I remember.
Yeah, that's a very common theme of the folks that we've kind of talked about. You're gonna definitely hear that you're receiving so much more when you're doing it. I love that. I think for me it was when I started to have more time and money to do more things, I was like, oh, let me jump in here and let me do these things. And I wasn't as intentional as I wanted to be. And that was the mistake that I made, where I started joining a lot of these boards. And, I, I had, my calendar was full of stuff. And I was like, oh, but it wasn't the right things for my heart and what I wanted to do. And so I color code my calendar. And it's, my family goes on there first, and it's in red, and nothing gets in the way of that. And my normal color is kind of the normal business operations, and then my giving is green. And so my calendar was filled up with all this green stuff. I was spending 15-20 hours a week. I still am right now, but I was doing it wrong because I wasn't asking the right questions of where I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. And that's why I transitioned to what I'm doing now with these makeovers, because we can all, like, it's like it can end up being a part-time job or a full-time job to volunteer and serve on boards and stuff like that. You got to make sure you're asking the right questions, and how can you show up the way that is impactful, that also matches what you want in your heart. So that was unexpected to me. I didn't think that I needed to be more strategic about it, but
Mhm.
that's something that I learned.
Interesting. Interesting. So, one of the things that we're trying to do here with this series, not here necessarily with this conversation, but the series is to paint a picture of how our colleagues are engaging their community, their staff, even the world in some cases. We just wanted to paint a picture for other people to say, hey, that's a cool idea. I can try that. Because sometimes there's so many ways that we can get involved and we're kind of like paralyzed in inaction, or we think we're doing more than we really are, or whatever it might be. What's some advice that you could give to someone who maybe unsure how to give, or maybe is in the same situation you're in? Like, I feel like I'm giving all the way all the time and I feel unfulfilled.
Mm. Yeah, one of my core values is impact and how I can make an impact.
Mm.
And I would say, number one, you need to know what kind of, I think you need to do some research and some studying and figure out kind of something that you're passionate about, right? That's really that we've heard that a ton, is like, if you're not passionate about something, it's not gonna get the reward and you're not gonna have the influence, right? One of the things that we're doing, and my team doesn't even know this yet, but we're doing something. We created a theme of next year, we're going to make an impact today on something. So no one's going to leave their work day until they make an actual impact on something. And the leadership team came up with 50 ways that we're going to do that. And so it's in a way of giving back. We put a budget aside and we're going to do some crazy, unreasonable things, but it gives people a purpose, right? So like, we are in business, we're going to write policies, whatever, who cares how much you write or what you did or how many clients you have. At the end of the day, it matters what purpose you can do. So I would say, and then the cool thing about running a business is you can inspire others, and then you've got an army of people that are ready to kind of initiate this, and now you're really making a dent. So I would just think about how you can incorporate something into your business that sends the message every day of how to show up differently and how to give back and get your team involved. That's what I would say.
And I love
How
that. I
about for
love
you?
I love getting people involved. Community, man, we were created to be in community. Like,
Mm.
like if you can do things with more than one person, it's always more meaningful. That shared experience is so important. I would say, yeah, this is the common theme. Like, find something you're passionate about. If it's kids, if it's animals, like there's so many different ways to engage the community. What fires you up? Because if you do something just because someone else is doing it, it doesn't fire you up. Like, I I have a heart for special needs individuals. I would not do well in a special needs charity. Like, it'd be hard for me. It's not that I'm not passionate or don't care. It's just and we've heard from several people who are just so passionate about that, and I love it. And I love that there's people who are different than me. But like, what fires you up? Because giving is hard. Giving is by nature an unselfish act if you do it right. If you're giving to try to gain something, you're not really giving. But true giving is an unselfish act. And if you're not passionate and sold out for something, it's gonna be really hard to do it right and to do it cheerfully and to do it with a happy heart. So find what excites you. If you have kids, find what excites your kids. Right. If there's if there's something going on at school or some family that's in need, if you can involve your kids, because all of us are passionate about our kids. And one thing that we've heard from so many people is we've learned to give from our family, from our culture, from our community. And that's the legacy we want to keep going. So if you can get your kids involved, what they're passionate about, you're going to be passionate about whatever it is. And don't push back, right? You never want to crutch a giving spirit, right? If it's dogs at the SPCA and you're like, dogs, there's hungry people, man, encourage them to give, and then pivot that if there's something else you want to align with your values. But that's what I say. Sit down long enough, find passion, talk to your family, do it as a community, and it's a beautiful thing. So,
Love that.
Billy, I'm excited about this journey. I think we have 7 or 8 episodes here that we've recorded, and y'all, thank you for coming along with the journey. We'd love to hear your stories. If there's something you want to share with us, you can find Billy and I online. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really cool thing to be a part of this journey with you, Erik. And I think it's going to be impactful. And it already has been. And so I'm just grateful to be a part of it, and I'm grateful to share it with others, and hopefully it inspires others to do more. And we give more together. And that'll be great.
Give more together. I love it. Cool. All right, Billy. Thanks, man.
Thank you.